My mother waited until I stepped off the graduation stage to say the most vicious sentence a parent can deliver. She wished I hadn't lived long enough to earn that degree. For a moment, I thought I misheard her. The applause still echoed behind me. The dean's handshake still tingled against my palm, and the gold tassel brushed softly against my cheek. I had pictured this day for years, imagined what it might feel like to stand in a cap and gown and finally achieve something no one in my family thought I could. But standing there in the crowded hallway outside the auditorium, her words cut through the noise like a blade being dragged across glass. I froze. Not because the sentence surprised me, but because of how calmly she said it, as if she had simply stated a fact she'd been holding onto for years. I grew up in Minneapolis, in a family that treated my younger brother Tyler like he was made of gold and the rest of us were just scenery in his spotlight. Tyler was the athlete, the prodigy, the one who could bring home a participation trophy and get a steak dinner for it. I could bring home straight A's, and the most I'd get was a distracted nod and a reminder to drive him to practice. While Tyler got private coaching and weekend trips for tournaments, I worked part-time jobs to cover bills my parents didn't want to talk about. They called it being a team player. I now know it was something else entirely. By the time I was old enough to leave home, I had learned two things about my family. First, they admired success only when Tyler achieved it. Second, they relied on me for everything else. When I moved to Denver to pursue my MBA, I paid part of their mortgage, covered Tyler's textbooks, and sent money whenever they said they were short. They never asked how I managed. They just assumed I would. Despite everything, graduation was supposed to be different. I invited them because a small part of me still believed they might show up for me the way they showed up for Tyler. I pictured them clapping, smiling, maybe even hugging me with the kind of pride I'd only ever imagined. The auditorium was filled with families cheering loudly, holding flowers, snapping pictures as names were called across the stage. I heard that swell of pride in other people's voices and let myself hope, just a little, that my name might trigger the same reaction. When the dean announced, "Harper Morgan, Master of Business Administration," the room applauded. For 1 second, I felt seen, not by my family, but by the world around me. I crossed the stage, accepted my degree, and walked down the steps with the faintest spark of belief that maybe, finally, today would mean something to them. Then I stepped into the hallway where graduates reunited with their families, and everything collapsed. My mother didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She didn't even look at my diploma. Instead, she pressed her lips together, glanced at Tyler, and then turned to me with a coldness I didn't expect. "You know," she said, loud enough for the families beside us to hear, "I wish you hadn't lived long enough to earn that degree." Conversations snapped shut. A woman holding balloons beside us gasped. Someone dropped a program onto the floor. I felt my stomach twist so violently I thought I might collapse. Tyler didn't say anything. My father didn't either. They stood there as if what she said was reasonable, as if my achievement had somehow inconvenienced them. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My throat tightened until breathing felt impossible. My mother continued talking, almost casually, as if she hadn't just detonated something inside me. "All that money you spent on yourself," she added, "could have gone toward helping your brother stay ahead. He has real potential. This degree of yours is nice, but it doesn't change who the real star is." In that moment, everything inside me rewrote itself. Every late-night job, every bill I paid, every sacrifice I made suddenly aligned into one clear truth. No matter what I achieved, they would never see me as anything but a burden. I stepped back, staring at the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally and realizing they never had. The hallway spun with noise and color, but all I could hear was the steady, repeating echo of her words. I hadn't expected applause from them, but I never expected annihilation. I turned away before the tears could rise. My cap nearly slipped off my head as I pushed through the crowd, ignoring my mother calling after me with annoyance, not regret. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I needed to get away from the people who had just ruined the biggest moment of my life. As I walked out into the bright Denver sunlight, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was clarity. The kind that arrives when someone finally shows you exactly who they are and you decide to stop pretending otherwise. I didn't know how the day would end, but I knew one thing. The woman who walked across that stage was not the same woman who had walked into that auditorium. Something had broken, something had awakened, and the world around me was about to change because of it. But I had no idea just how far that change would go. The first thing I did after leaving the ceremony was sit in my car and stare at the steering wheel until the edges of my vision stopped shaking. My cap slid into my lap, and the diploma case lay on the passenger seat like it belonged to someone else. My phone buzzed, but I didn't look at it. I already knew who it would be. I wasn't ready to hear more excuses, more blame, more ways to twist my own success into something selfish. Not anymore. By the time I reached my apartment, the shock had drained out of me, leaving something heavier and quieter in its place. I set the diploma on the kitchen counter, not even bothering to open it. I dropped my keys, turned off my phone, and let the silence settle around me like a blanket I hadn't realized I needed. That night, I lay awake replaying my mother's voice again and again, but instead of feeling smaller, I felt something unfamiliar begin to rise. The next morning, when I finally turned my phone on, the messages rolled in. My mother had sent one sentence. "Your reaction yesterday was childish." My father added, "You made your mother look bad." Tyler said nothing at all. But sitting there in my kitchen, the light coming through the blinds in steady stripes across the table, I saw something clearly for the first time. They had never cared about how I felt, only how I functioned. And suddenly, I wasn't willing to function for them anymore. I opened my banking app. Every month for years, money had flowed out of my account into theirs. Part of the mortgage, utility bills, Tyler's sports fees, even his nutrition coach payments. I had covered all of it because they said Tyler had a future worth investing in. They never said that about me, not once. My finger hovered over the recurring transfers. Then one by one, I canceled them. Every confirmation message felt like the quiet snapping of an invisible chain. A knock interrupted me. I opened the door to find Adam, a coworker from my consulting firm, holding 2 coffees and a confused expression. "You didn't come to the post-ceremony lunch," he said. "Figured you might need caffeine or someone to complain to." I stepped aside to let him in. Adam didn't ask for details immediately. He sat on the couch, passed me one of the coffees, and waited until I was ready. When I finally told him what happened, his jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt or try to fix it. He let me speak. When I finished, he said gently, "Harper, none of that is your fault. You've been carrying their expectations so long you forgot to look at your own." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that until he said it. The days that followed weren't easy, but they were clearer. At work, something in me clicked into place. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove my value to the wrong people. I focused on a corporate strategy project that had stalled for months before I took it on. With the pressure of my family expectations gone, my mind felt sharper, my decisions cleaner. Within weeks, leadership began noticing. During one meeting, our division head looked at me and said, "You have a way of seeing structure in the chaos. We need more of that." Recognition. Real recognition. The kind I'd chased my entire life from the wrong sources. Then came the email that changed everything. A Denver business magazine wanted to feature me as part of a Rising Leaders series. Me, the girl who was told she shouldn't have lived long enough to graduate. The interview focused on resilience, difficult beginnings, and refusing to stay defined by the people who underestimated you. I didn't mention my family. They didn't deserve to be part of the story I was finally building for myself. The article went live on a Thursday morning. That same night, I came home from a 12-hour day, exhausted but proud, and saw 2 silhouettes through the frosted glass of my apartment door. My heartbeat slowed. I already knew who it was. My parents. I unlocked the door slowly. They stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, just as they always had. My mother's eyes swept the room as if she were inspecting something she owned. My father looked grim, tense in a way that told me this visit wasn't about reconciliation. "We need to talk," my mother snapped. I crossed my arms. "About what?" "Your brother," my father said. "He lost his athletic scholarship. Some disciplinary issues. It's complicated." My mother added quickly, He needs money to stay enrolled. We expect you to help. Family supports family." Her tone made it sound like a command, not a request. It always had. I didn't sit. "Why would you come to me?" my mother scoffed. "Because you're the responsible one. Tyler is under pressure. He needs you. And frankly, you owe this family after the way you embarrassed us at graduation." Something inside me hardened. Not anger, not sadness, something final. "I don't owe you anything," I said quietly. My father straightened, disbelief flickering across his face. "We raised you. You used me," I corrected. "You took from me. And when I accomplished something for myself, you tried to tear it apart." My mother's face twisted. "You're being dramatic. Tyler has a future, Harper. Don't ruin it just because you're upset." I stepped closer. "I didn't ruin Tyler's future. He did, and I won't sacrifice myself to save him." Their silence was sharp, cutting through the air like a cold wind. For the first time in my life, I saw them not as parents, but as people who had no power left over me. But the real shock would come with what happened next. My mother was the first to recover from the silence. She lifted her chin, eyes narrowing like she was staring at a problem she could still control. "You are being ungrateful," she said. "We poured years into you, we fed you, we housed you. The least you can do is help your brother stay afloat." Her words didn't sting the way they once would have. Instead, they revealed the truth of our entire relationship. They had never viewed my support as generosity. They saw it as debt. A lifelong, mandatory repayment for a childhood every parent is supposed to provide. My father leaned forward, his voice low. "If you don't step up, Tyler could lose everything. Do you understand what that means for his future?" I met his gaze without flinching. "Do you understand what my graduation meant for mine?" He didn't respond. My mother paced once, frustration tightening across her features. "This is exactly why we didn't want you wasting money on that degree. It filled your head with selfish ideas. You think you're above us now." "I think," I said slowly, "that for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of you." The sentence hung between us like a curtain falling. My father stood abruptly. "We didn't come here to argue. We came because Tyler needs help and you're going to give it." "No," I said. The single word landed with the weight of a door slamming shut. My mother blinked, stunned. My father exhaled sharply, shaking his head as if I were a stubborn child refusing a chore. "You're being dramatic," my mother repeated. "You always exaggerate things. What happened at graduation was exactly what you meant," I interrupted. "And it was the moment I stopped believing there was anything left for me to fix here." Her eyes flashed with something between anger and disbelief. "You think one slip of the tongue erases everything we've done for you?" I shook my head. "No, it revealed everything you never did." For the first time in my life, I watched my mother fall silent without knowing what to say next. I walked to the door and opened it, letting the cool hallway air spill into the room. "If you came to apologize," I said, "I would listen. If you came to talk about rebuilding something, we could try. But if you came for what you always come for, more of me, then this conversation is over." My father's expression hardened. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I replied, "but not as much as I would regret staying in the role you wrote for me." My mother lifted her purse, her movements stiff. She stepped toward the door, pausing in front of me as if waiting for me to yield. I didn't move. "You think you're strong now," she said quietly, almost pitying. "But life has a way of humbling people like you." I met her stare. "No, people like you humble people like me. Life is where I finally learned how to stand." She didn't respond. She turned sharply and walked out. My father followed, slower, like he wanted to say something but refused to be the one who broke their united front. When the door finally clicked shut, the silence that filled the apartment wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, clean, like a window opening after years in a sealed room. I leaned against the wall and let out a long breath I felt like I'd been holding since childhood. The next few weeks moved quickly. My project at work ended with results far beyond projections. Leadership recognized it publicly, and the division head pulled me into his office with a document in hand. "You're ready for more," he said, sliding the contract toward me. "Team lead, strategic planning, you earned this." Not because I paid someone's bills, not because I carried someone else's expectations, but because of my work, my mind, my resilience. The magazine feature gained momentum, and suddenly people across the firm knew my name. For the first time, the story being told about me was one I recognized. One evening, after a long day, I stepped onto my balcony overlooking downtown Denver. The sun was setting behind the buildings, turning the windows into copper mirrors. The air was warm, still, almost tender. I held a glass of water in my hands and felt the city hum around me, alive and full of possibilities I finally believed belonged to me. I thought of the girl who drove Tyler to practice instead of studying. The girl who worked double shifts to keep the lights on. The girl who kept hoping her family would see her if she just worked harder. She crossed the graduation stage, but she didn't survive the moment that came after. The woman standing here now did. I didn't miss my family, not the real version of them. I missed who I pretended they were so I wouldn't feel alone. Letting go of that illusion didn't leave an empty space. It left room for myself. As the last streak of sunlight dropped behind the skyline, I felt something settle in my chest. Not pride, not joy, something steadier. The sense that, for the first time, I was living a life that belonged entirely to me. They tried to ruin my graduation. They tried to ruin me, but I walked away with something they never expected. A future they can no longer touch.